welcome in. It is Big Ten Today. Great to have you on this Thursday. Dave Revson and Andy Katz, who hightailed it back up I-57 from Champaign after a wild game last night. I think what we saw in the Big Ten last night is there are lots of different ways to win a game.
If you like the game of basketball, you saw it in all its glory on this network. You saw some defense, some bricks, and unbelievable scoring that I saw down in Champaign from two entertaining offenses.
Well, let's get to those two games. It is our big story Wednesday night in the Big Ten. Both games, as Andy said, here on the network. Northwestern playing without Ryan Langborg. He was out with an ankle injury, still able to top Maryland on the road thanks to a career-high 27 from Nick Martinelli. And Illinois and Minnesota combined for 202 points, the most in a regulation Big Ten game in the last 15 years. The Illini taking it 105-97. Andy, you were there. You had the best seat in the house to watch this one. Let's talk about Illinois first. I mean, their offense just gets better and better and better. It is at an absolutely elite level. It's the most points they've scored in a regulation game since 1994. Pretty much couldn't miss. I mean, the stat I cited last night, they scored on 77% of their offensive possessions.
And you know, while Tom Izzo, who you'll talk to later, is not a huge fan of analytics, Brad Underwood is.
Yes.
And he loves the offensive efficiency. He said it to us during the day. He said it, I heard as I was driving back on the post-game show, basically that the narrative has changed for the most part in the Big Ten. There are at least a half dozen teams that are at a high offensive efficient clip, and Illinois is certainly one of those. And I think that the Big Ten does not get the credit. That narrative of it being slow and plodding, I think it gets a little overrun because Zach Edey's in the league, who, by the way, is not as slow and plodding anymore as he used to be. But the rest of the league is not like that. And Purdue can push it too.
And Purdue can score.
Yes, of course, they can. So I think that gets sort of, that's just old news. They're so entertaining. Defensively, we can get to. But, Terrence Shannon, I mean, he's just a truck going downhill. You can't stop him. Coleman Hawkins, when I talked to him yesterday afternoon, he is at peace with his game right now. He is so relaxed and basically telling me that, once he came back for the draft, once he realized that, he essentially needs to get better and just needs to play, you can see he's enjoying it. And if he misses, that's okay. Right back at it the next possession. And they're getting contributions in a variety of ways. Early in the season, Domas was playing much better. Certainly when Shannon was out, he could play better, but he's still filled those gaps. It's Harmon, Rogers, Goody, will come in every once in a while. But I thought the big news last night was the play of Dane Danger, because they're going to need him, certainly against Purdue next week, physicality, the 5 fouls, and into the NCAA tournament. When it becomes usually more half court, they're going to need, his ability to score around the basket, draw fouls, and get to the free throw line where he was able to connect.
Yeah, he was fantastic. First double-digit scoring outing for him in conference play. They had 3 players score more than 20 points. The first time that has happened for Illinois in 8 years. Their points per possession number was their best since 2000. So, I mean, offensively, they are operating at an incredible clip. Interestingly, though, there were a lot of questions in that post-game news conference that you referenced. And, of course, we broadcast here on the Big Ten Network about their defense. It certainly is not at the level that it has been at in recent years. I think the question that Brad Underwood is wrestling with to a certain extent is, does it need to be? I mean, when you're that good offensively, can you just outscore people? And that's what Illinois has tried to do and done pretty well here this year.
Well, I would say that I think they have a great shot to do it because of who they've got scoring. I think they're going to run with this. Obviously, they'd like to be better defensively, and there will be some games where they're going to have to tighten it up, certainly when they play Purdue, and we'll see who they match up with, whether it's a Big Ten tournament or the NCAA tournament. But also what I appreciated last night in talking to them after the game as well is they saluted Minnesota. You have to look and say, wait a minute, they're really good. They made shots. They were contested at times. It wasn't like it was, and I kind of joked after the game when I was interviewing everyone about it being an NBA All-Star game. We know there was no defense played in the NBA All-Star game. There was some defense last night, but the shooting was at such a high clip by everybody. I mean, Cam Christie, he had his moments. Dawson Garcia. Pharrell Payne was just absolutely a beast inside anytime he got near the basket. So think about what Minnesota was able to accomplish offensively. It was just a great game by both teams, and Illinois just had a little bit extra at the end.
You mentioned what Minnesota was able to achieve offensively. Some of the numbers are historic.
Staggering.
I mean, so take a look at this. There have been more than 300,000 games across the NBA, WNBA, and Division I men and women the last 25 seasons. Only one team has scored 95 or more points, shot 70% or better from three, and had 5 or fewer turnovers. That was Minnesota. So you're talking about 300,000 games, you're talking about 600,000 teams involved. They're the only team ever to do that, and they lost the game. So it's not that they're the only team ever to do that and lose. They're the only team ever to do that, period. No one has ever put together an offensive game like that over that period of time, 25 years, and they lost the game. It boggles the mind. It defies explanation, but it does show you what Minnesota's capable of.
Yeah, I mean, if you take this game by itself, you have to be incredibly positive about Minnesota.
Yes.
It is unfortunate that they've let some other games slip away. Go way back to the Missouri game, back in the non-conference game they should have won. They didn't play well against Nebraska, and give Nebraska credit last Sunday. They've had these other games, Wisconsin, where you could make the argument they should have won, and they'd be in a much better position potentially for the NCAA tournament, let alone a higher seed in the Big Ten tournament. But we talked about this yesterday. We're in an era that if you could count on guys returning, you'd say that team could literally be the favorite next year. I know Rutgers got the big-time recruits,
right,
top 5, but they're freshmen. But if you told me right now that entire Minnesota roster is coming back, which it could, save Parker Fox, I might pick them in the top 3, without question. They're that good. They're ascending. They play well together. There's so much to like about that group. The unfortunate thing is we don't know what's going to happen after the season. Does Cam Christie flirt with going to the NBA? Does the NIL money come through? Does someone come in and poach? If that doesn't happen, he is building something really special in Minneapolis. I am glad that they were patient with him and allowed him, it hasn't been that long, but allowed him to build it. And we see what happened.
They still have a chance to finish 11-9 in the league. They got Penn State and Indiana at home next 2 games, and they go to Northwestern, and then the Big Ten tournament, as we know, is in Minneapolis. So we're not totally writing off the Gophers, as I know you're
not at all.
for the postseason.
They could go on a great run.
What about Northwestern? I honestly think, look, they've won some amazing games here the last couple of years. They've beaten Purdue twice. They've had wins over Illinois. They've won some big-time games. But when you consider the circumstances of what they were up against last night, that they're obviously without Ty Berry for the rest of the year. They were without Ryan Langborg last night. Chris Collins telling me yesterday they hope to have him back on Saturday against Iowa, but it's certainly not a season-ending injury either way. It's an ankle injury that he actually sustained against Michigan, and then it just didn't get better over the course of the week. But when you consider those circumstances, they started a walk-on in Blake Smith, who scored more points last night than he had scored in his entire career coming in. You think about that, this is as good a win as Northwestern has had in the last 2 years.
I completely agree. I watched in the back room down in Champaign last night, your pregame show, and you set it up perfectly. It was feeding right into Maryland. Here comes Northwestern, depleted. A Maryland team, which you saw on Sunday, played really well at Rutgers.
Great. Yes.
We're up 20 at Jersey Mike's. So you got Maryland playing well, you would think. Back at home, I know not a great crowd, but still, they're usually very good at home. You've got a limping Northwestern coming in. Everything turned like this is going to be Maryland, maybe even double figures. Northwestern, it's okay. They can lose this game. They're okay. It's not the end of the world. And, for the most part, they controlled the game the whole way.
Yep.
Martinelli, who would not be like your poster child for, a shooting clinic. Like, this is how you shoot the basketball. He shoots it with like his hand over here and he just sort of throws stuff up, but it goes in.
Yeah.
And, he's got great work ethic. He's got a nose for the basketball. I mean, Nicholson, we've seen his progression this season. He just finds a way. That one play around the baseline where it looked like, he was going to maybe dump it off, and suddenly he just saw the opening and just jammed it.
Great seal by Martinelli, by the way.
Again, there he helps out. You talk about the walk-on, and a game where Boo Buie didn't have to be their hero, which I thought was also significant.
Yeah.
And they are now in a pole position for the second year in a row to get a double bye. And we talked about sort of last week, checking boxes, okay? The box being checked of getting back to the NCAA tournament back-to-back years. That's going to happen. The double bye looks like that could happen. Being undefeated at home in the Big Ten, they got 2 more to go. That could happen. And now, legitimately, they have a chance, we'll see, to have 13 Big Ten wins. I mean, remarkable.
Yeah.
Because they've actually played really well at Michigan State. They still have that game, but they've played really well. I mean, they have 3 left.
No, it's a pretty incredible story, and I think it's even more incredible. Like, if you went into that game last night and said, well, how can they win? You'd say, well, Boo Buie has to be special. Brooks Barnheiser has to be special. They combined for 6 field goals, and Boo Buie looked out of sorts, frankly.
Right.
I did not think he had a great game. There were periods during the press break. It was very strange to me that he wasn't kind of coming back and demanding the ball. Barnheiser hit his free throws, and that was one thing they did. They hit 28 of 31 free throws, but Barnheiser only had 2 field goals in the game. This is a team that leads the nation in conference play in three-point percentage. Leads the nation, any conference. They made 2 3-pointers, so they didn't do anything that they've done to win games, but I think what makes this team impressive is this was a great offensive team, right? They went toe-to-toe twice in huge offensive outputs with Purdue, winning one, losing the other in overtime. They went toe-to-toe with Illinois and beat them in a game with tons of offense in Evanston. And then Ty Berry got hurt, and they can't spread the floor like they were earlier in the year, and they certainly can't do it without Berry and Langborg, and they've kind of reinvented themselves. They go harder after the offensive glass, and they become a defensive team more along the lines of what they did last year. So give them a ton of credit for essentially pivoting in midseason.
If we look back at this season, I think we will look back and say there were a couple of circle moments. I would actually go back even to Phoenix with that Arizona State win. Arizona State is obviously very mediocre, but when that game came, that was a critical point in the season because, Chicago State, DePaul, I mean, they sort of eked that out. They weren't playing well. You go to Phoenix, neutral court allegedly, and you get that win convincingly. I thought that was a great confidence boost. And then spin forward, the road wins, Penn State. Other teams haven't won there.
Right.
Indiana. We saw what just happened to Wisconsin. And then Maryland. These are teams obviously not going to the tournament, but those are the kind of games that if you are a tournament team and you want to be a decent seed, you win. And they did.
Maryland's quad 1 win. Now, whether it will be at the end of the year, I don't know. And it's not a quad 1 win along the lines of beating Purdue. And I understand the committee doesn't look at every quad 1 game and equate them to one another. They certainly are far more sophisticated than that. But right now, it's a quad 1 win. It's their 5th quad 1 win of the year and an awfully impressive one when you consider the circumstances. Michigan State looking for its 26th straight NCAA tourney appearance, the longest streak in Big Ten history. Our buddy Mike DeCourcy had them as a 9 seed in his Tuesday bracket. Team with a few high-level wins, topping Baylor, Illinois, Maryland. No losses outside the top 2 quads. One more quad win opportunity on the road. It comes Saturday against Purdue. Head coach Tom Izzo joining us now for our big interview. And Coach, appreciate you taking the time. You guys are in the midst now of 6 days off. What are you focused on with this group heading into the stretch run?
Well, not only 6 days off, but one of those weird things that we have spring break early this year. You'd like to have 6 days off, but you wouldn't like it during spring break. It seems like that's all we've had time to do. And it can be good and it can be bad. You can't practice forever, as you know, Dave, especially at this time of year. But at the same time, we've had a lot of meetings, try to go through things, do motivational things, have movie night. We're trying to do a lot of different things to get these guys ready for this stretch run.
What was the movie?
Yeah, you'll be liking it. I watched the last episode of the Last Dance. I thought it was really
Oh,
good. Threw a few
yeah.
Magic Johnson things in there, and so it was good. It was good.
That's pretty good. Does Jordan resonate with them? Like, do they understand the magnitude of what he did and what it all meant at that time?
Well, all I cared about in that thing is I think they do. I think, like Magic, I say he's, some guys transcend time, they just, they should. If they're really basketball guys, they should. But the stories are better about what guys go through to be great. And that's kind of, there's a lot of adversity. There's a lot of challenges. There's things that they go through. And I think if I was a businessman, I'd show that. It doesn't matter what. If I was a broadcaster, I might even show that, or somebody in TV. I just think it's motivational to see what a group of people has to go through to do elite things.
So there's a message there, clearly, with a group that hasn't necessarily met up to some of the external expectations. You're essentially saying to them what?
Well, there are internal expectations too, But, around here, I talk about Cleves a lot. I talk about Draymond. I talk about Magic all the time. Steve Smith, some of our guys that have, came in and went through some tough times. Everybody thinks everything's easy, and it's not. And everybody goes through some ups and downs. There's more that goes on than the outside world knows, whether it be injuries, whether it be deaths in families, whether it be, but everybody has to cope with that. And I think this day and age, we're all coping with the transfers and all that. And, you just want them to handle it the best they can handle it. So anything I can show on the Magic documentary, on the Michael, on ones that have done it to an elite level, I think benefits.
Speaking of elite, you got Purdue coming up on Saturday at Mackey. You gave them absolutely everything they could handle there last year. It was one of the best games, I thought, of last season. What's the strategy against Zach Edey and company?
Well, I went over to see Jonathan Smith, our football guy. I'm taking 2 linebackers and a couple defensive ends, and we're going to get after him a little bit. But you know what? Matt has done a great job with him. You look at a million different pieces of tape, and that's what you have time to do during this segment. And some people doubled them, some people tripled them, some people played them one-on-one. Then you look at his stats, and he's getting 25, 30 points on every one of them. I think the kid has gotten in better shape. I think his body fat is down. I don't know that. He's one of those guys you see on TV and say, wow, he's big. Then you stand next to him in person and you say, you don't even belong here. He belongs in the NFL. He's got a 10.5-inch wingspan. And when you think about that, I got some guys with long wingspans at 7'2", 7'3". And so there's things that you can't simulate in practice. We put broom handles on things and different things that you can do to try to somewhat simulate them. But he's 300 pounds. And if he gets moving south and you get in his way, you better be the hitter before he hits you, or you're going to get knocked into the tuba section. So that is a problem. But I think the bigger problem and where he's done a really good job is I think the kid Smith now is so much better than he was a year ago. He runs their team. He gets 7.5 rebounds a game. That's unbelievable. Along with the assists, he shoots a high percentage. He's been as consistent as anybody on that team. So you got an inside threat, an outside threat. And then you've got a bunch of experienced guys that have been around the block. They've been through that disappointing loss in the NCAA tournament last year. But there's no question they're the best team in the Big Ten. I think they're the best team in the country. And hopefully they'll get to show that after this weekend.
Well, you're going to need everything from your big guys. And I know you had a press availability yesterday. I was watching some of it. There were a lot of conversations, a lot of questions about Xavier Booker. Can you just explain kind of what your philosophy has been in terms of how you've brought him along, why you made the decisions you made in terms of when to play him and when not to play him?
Well, I determined when to play him when he's ready to play. I think you look at pro guys now, you look at college guys, it's a different era. If you look at the number of freshmen playing, even in the Big Ten, But if you look nationally, there's just few freshmen playing, and that's because of not only the transfer portal, but the COVID. We're playing against 23 and 24-year-olds half the time. And, Book has been great. I mean, if you spend any time with him, you love him. He understands where he's at. He understands what his deficiencies are. One of the biggest ones was just strength. He's gained 21 pounds of pretty good strength. He's really improved the last 3 weeks. But I think people see a ranking, I mean, what does a ranking mean? It's can you play? And he's always got great skills. He just needed to develop more strength and understand that the physicality. And he was the one that came to me and said, Coach, I'm not sure I was ready for all this. And I said, well, Book, 99% of the people aren't. But because of his ranking, our people get a little frustrated here. But one thing I'll tell you, Dave, that has really been a whole 30 years of my career. I want to win more than you want me to win, more than my fans want me to win, more than my wife wants me to win, or my mother. And if ever I wouldn't play a guy because it would cause us a chance not to win, people must be drinking something. So we're trying to get him ready as fast as we can. I have absolutely appreciated the process. Do I wish it was a little faster? But it's here, and now I told him he's going to see physicality at a new level, and God bless him, and I think that's one thing Matt has done, Matt and I grew up with Gene and Judd, and these games have been physical since the day I came here, which is almost 40 years ago, and it hasn't changed, but Gene had some guys like this too. They just weren't as skilled offensively as Zach is. And Matt deserves a lot of credit for that. I think he's good offensively. He's pretty good defensively. He's a phenomenal offensive rebounder, and he uses his length and his girth to a great extent. And yet Book, can really shoot it. He's got long arms. They're 5-6 inches from Edie's, but long arms for a kid, and is improving every day. So I'm ecstatic where he is and where he's going to be. I'm not disappointed that it didn't happen that much earlier. You always wish it, but there's a process for everybody. And believe it or not, he's worked at it. He's gained the weight. He's better in the weight room. He's getting stronger to be able to survive the battles that you have to do, not only in this league, but at this level.
Coach, one last question for you. You've got senior night coming up next week. You got a big group moving on, among them your son, Steven. And I was there when he made the shot against Rutgers. It was an incredible scene, so emotional for everyone there, not the least of which yourself and what it meant to you. Can you put into words what this experience has been like to have him alongside you on a day-to-day basis and to be able to share something that's so dear to both of you?
Yeah, I can put it in for me. I'm not sure anybody would understand it because most people get to spend time with their kid for, his 18 years. Then he goes off to college. And I taught him that move, by the way, and back when he was in, diapers. But, I didn't get the chance to do that for the first 18 years. I was kind of helping raise him, but I was raising other kids from other families. And when he came aboard, I thought he'd be a manager, and it was something he wanted to do. And for me, Dave, been the greatest thing that happened to me in all my career here, because I've gotten to spend time with him doing what I love and what he loves. And maybe the most important thing, he's gotten to be a part of a team, which means, his academics went up. Just everything he's done, he's gotten better. He was a shy kid. Now he's not as shy. What a team is supposed to do, no matter if you're a team in your profession, in the business world, or in the sports world, it has helped him become a better man, and it'll help him for the next 70 years. And it helped me a lot because every trip we went on, we took a picture at half court of every place we went. His first one, I think, was in Madison Square Garden against Kentucky. So he started out with a bang, Hopefully we can end with a bang, but it's been great. It's been the greatest thing that's happened to me here.
Wonderful. Tom Izzo, always a pleasure. Thanks so much, Coach. Good luck this weekend.
Thanks, Dave. See you, buddy.
Up to the minute. Big Ten tourney bracket. We find ourselves 13 days away from the tourney. Purdue, Illinois, Northwestern, Nebraska, your double byes. Wednesday would feature Ohio State against Rutgers, Michigan, Maryland, Penn State, Minnesota, and Indiana, Iowa, the two known matchups for Thursday. Wisconsin and Michigan State would be awaiting their opponents. Let's talk March, and not just the Big Ten tourney, but the NCAA tourney. I know you have a few Big Ten teams that you really like heading into March. Who are those teams, and why do you like them so much?
Okay, there's a little Captain Obvious here, but you can push back. There are a number of reasons why, obviously, I like Purdue. Not just to advance, but to get to Glendale. I actually had the conversation the other day with Kyle Guy, formerly of Virginia, who did the exact thing that I think Purdue could do, which was in 2018, 2019. He's from the state of Indiana. He told me that last year, I never knew this, that he texted a bunch of the Purdue guys that he knew and told them to use what happened to them against Fairleigh Dickinson for this year if they were all going to come back. Never knew that he did that.
Yeah, interesting.
Because they used that as motivation with UMBC. And then, by the way, they had to get through an unbelievable game against Purdue that next year to get to the national
Purdue
championship.
literally a second away
Yes.
from beating them.
And you can make the argument that that Purdue team with Carson Edwards might have been the best team in that group. Lance Jones and Braden Smith and Zach Edey, they're all better. And that's why Purdue is, just a notch above they were even a year ago. It also lays out with Indianapolis and Detroit. I do think if they can just get out of Indy, they will feel the weight off of them. Even though the year before they lost to St. Peter's in a Sweet 16 situation, I just think what happened last year, just get to Detroit and they will feel some relief.
I agree. Okay,
Two.
so Purdue's one.
Illinois. Again, there's a little more Captain Obvious here, but what I saw last night was an offense that is going to be incredibly difficult to stop. You add in now the wrinkle of Dane Danger playing more, so if the game gets a little more half court, you've got the physicality. I think Stephen Bardo was calling him sort of the dancing bear. He's a little light on his feet, but he's big, and he's making some free throws now. So I think he's a difference maker. I know they don't have a true point guard, but, Terrence Shannon brings up the basketball quite a bit, and so it doesn't matter. So they have all the pieces, again, after what happened last year in that 8-9 matchup against Arkansas. I think there's a lot of motivation for this group to advance, and they're going to get a good seed, and they also could be in Indy, by the way, and could get to that second weekend. But the third team, here's the surprise. I'm all in on Nebraska. I think Nebraska has all the pieces to get to the Sweet 16. Now, the problem for Nebraska will be if they're in the 8-9 game. Because of the other number ones, they're not going to play Purdue. But I don't see them beating UConn. I don't see them beating Houston. If Arizona, Carolina, Tennessee, I think they have a chance. If they're in a 7-10, which they certainly could be, either way,
Right.
I legitimately think they could beat any of the twos because they can score. Rick Mast is a matchup problem. They can defend. Juwan Gary's playing great right now. This team's, together. They've now won on the road, which is something that they had not been able to do. And they're just finally hitting a consistent streak. They're the kind of team that no one's talking about, that when you look at the bracket, that they could be in a position, if they're not in the 8-9, because I just don't like them, unless they're against the fourth number one, I like them to advance to the Sweet 16.
I think they're going to be higher than that only because I think their schedule's really conducive here down the stretch. They legitimately could enter the Big Ten tournament on a 7-game win streak.
So you could see them as a 6, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, or as a 7 in the 7-10. I think that's very realistic.
Stay out of the 8-9, I think they get to the Sweet 16.
I'm with you. Look, I do think I think they can beat you a lot of different ways. To your point, I think they defend a good level. Basically everything you said. So you wanted me to push back, but I'm not going to push back.
All right.
I think.
Is there another team I didn't say?
No, I think those are probably the most obvious ones. Wisconsin, if they play at their best, if they can figure it out again, I would have said Northwestern a month ago.
Right.
I just feel like because the way they spread the floor, I think they're one of those teams where if you get hot and hit three-pointers, I just think without Ty Berry,
We want to say Michigan State,
be a little bit
but we haven't
harder.
seen it yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. Yeah. No, but to me, those are the obvious three.
Okay.
But you never know. That's the beauty of March. Fred Hoiberg in the discussion for Big Ten Coach of the Year. You look at a few of the candidates. Chris Collins won it last year. He's done a remarkable job with the banged-up group this year. You got Hoiberg and Ben Johnson there, both wildly exceeding expectations. Matt Painter, I should say, poised to win a second straight regular season title. Mike Rhodes cobbled together a roster in the offseason. He's won 8 league games. Brad Underwood just keeps on winning. So as you assess this race, it tends to be the coach who most exceeds expectations, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the challenge for Painter. Like if you could take this vote in April, if they make it to the Final Four, then I think Matt Painter gets it. But I think he's going to be judged, unfortunately, on what happens from now until then. Exceeding expectations, the most obvious one is Ben Johnson, but will they make the tournament? I think Fred Hoiberg, maybe Chris Collins. Where are you leaning?
I'm leaning Hoiberg now because, again, they have exceeded expectations.
Yeah.
So much was going to be about K-State Tominaga. He's had a good year, but not a great year.
Right.
Also, think about, you talk about cobbling a roster together. The Mast pickup, massive for him. Also, has gone through some injuries on this roster. It had happened in the past, but this year they were able to navigate it a little better. I mean, Gary obviously at one point. And the fact that they were able to win a little bit away from home, which had also been another bugaboo. The fact that they could get a double bye, all point toward Hoiberg, I think, is right now as the coach of the year. But I would not dismiss Chris Collins. No Langborg, and they win at Maryland. We'll see what happens this weekend. What if, and it still could happen, because Illinois has a very difficult schedule down the stretch, as much as I'm singing their praises, what if Northwestern finishes second again? It still could happen. You finish back-to-back years second place with that roster and everything that happened, you'd have to be under consideration for that. Brad Underwood, again, if they win the league, which still could happen, they go through the 6-week stretch with no Terrence Shannon. Right. And great pickups by Underwood, certainly with Domask, was a monster pickup for him and Justin Harmon and sort of putting that roster together. So it's still TBD. A lot's going to be known in the next couple of weeks, but I would lean Hoiberg as of now.
Right. And again, it kind of comes back to what are these different variables? Like you're talking about, what's interesting about Underwood and Collins is that they have faced adversity in the course of the season and they've been able to navigate it. Whereas what's interesting about Johnson and Hoiberg is you weren't expected to do a whole lot and you've done it. Again, I think like Matt Painter may end up being the best coach in the Big Ten this year. And talk about Lance Jones, an incredible portal pickup, understanding what you needed. I guess I just think for whatever reason, it's no different than in football where the Ohio State coach essentially never wins Big Ten Coach of the Year. Like that's just the way people vote. I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
Right.
I'm not putting value on it. I just think it's hard if you're the favorite to win it, no matter how great you are. And again, they have a great chance of being the number 1 overall seed. Ohio State women are outright Big Ten champs for the first time in 6 years. Their record 17th all-time conference title, clinched it with a 67-51 win last night over Michigan, the only team that beat them in conference play this year. J.C. Sheldon leading the way with 22. Kevin McGuff's team, the number 1 seed next week in Minneapolis.
We played really hard, and especially like you could really see JC, Cody, Celeste, the intensity that they were playing with was at a significantly higher level than the first time we played Michigan. And I look at the path that we've had to get to this point. We've had a very difficult Big Ten schedule, and so I'm really happy for our kids to be able to kind of go through that gauntlet and win the league.
I just knew we were playing for something big, and they won the Big Ten season champs when I was here, but I wasn't able to kind of participate in games and stuff like that. So I kind of just wanted to be a big part in that. And then just looking back, like the season has been crazy for the team, and then me especially, just going through that little slum and then finally finding my rhythm. So I just wanted to leave it all out there for this team and accomplish something that we've had for a goal for a long time.
Our big stat is brought to you by Walgreens. It's also focusing on the women's game. Caitlin Clark, yet another milestone last night. She had 33 points in Iowa's pounding of Minnesota. Moved her past Lynette Woodard, who had an amazing career at Kansas back in the AIAW days. She's now the all-time leading scorer in the history of large school women's basketball. She's 18 points away now from passing Pete Maravich to become the all-time large school scoring leader in the history of men's or women's college basketball. And Andy, what do you think it would mean for her to pass Maravich, which it seems like she might do as soon as this weekend? In fact, I'd be surprised if she doesn't.
So, soapbox moment here for a moment.
Okay.
Can we at least appreciate both? You know, I'm already seeing people chirping, you know, oh, this is Maravich's record, you know, oh, she's going to. No. He was awesome. He was transformational.
Yes.
Okay? He was one of a kind. People that have not seen Pete Maravich, YouTube his even instructional videos.
Amazing.
Unbelievable.
And
I mean,
again,
life
he
cut way
did
too
it in
short.
3 years without a three-point line. He was an unbelievable college player in a different era where no one really guarded. But he was an amazing, amazing, amazing player.
So let's appreciate Pistol Pete.
Yes.
Everything he did at LSU. And let's appreciate Caitlin Clark.
Yes.
Scoring is scoring. Basketball is basketball. She is doing it at a historic level. She will be the all-time NCAA scoring leader in the sport of basketball in Division I. It is remarkable, and let's appreciate that. We don't need to compare the two.
Right.
Because it's not comparable.
I agree with you. I think
the
this
comparing
is
of eras. I hate it.
Right.
It's pointless.
I'm with you. I think this is an apples and oranges, and I think it's irrelevant. It's still cool.
Yes.
Right? I mean, it's amazing that she's going to be number one. I would say this. From where I sit, and I remember Lynette Woodard, like you and I are old enough to remember her, old enough to remember like Ann Myers and how great
I remember Pistol
she
Pete
was.
on the Celtics.
And Cheryl, right. So, like, you know, I feel like I'm old enough to have a little perspective on this. Caitlin Clark is the most important player in the history of women's basketball, period, full stop. I don't think there's any question about that. She will go down, in my mind, as the greatest player in the history of women's college basketball. And I would say that whether she passed Pete Maravich or not. Like, to me, she is a transformational player. And that's really all you have to say about Caitlin Clark. And none of this other stuff matters.
Last night at Minnesota, and this is happening in every arena, what happens after the game, the swarm around her, first of all, she takes the time to do it, is remarkable. But she is basically the Beatles all in one in this sport. There is no other college athlete, I don't care, Heisman doesn't matter, none, zero, who commands the attention on the road or at home. The ticket prices this weekend are through the roof. She is one of one. And by the way, the Caitlin Crunch, it's really good.
Oh, you got the cereal?
I got the cereal. I debated, but you know, my kitchen's small. I don't know if I want to keep an extra box. It's better than Frosted Flakes.
Better than Frosted Flakes. Now, you know, for historical value, right? Like if you're ever gonna get the box of cereal assessed for its value, you don't want to open it.
I know.
It went down in value when you opened it, but
right.
but it's a tasty treat.
Yes.
Who can resist?
And I had it for dinner.
Who can resist the Caitlin Crunch? Women's tourney sold out in Minneapolis next week. The men will be there for the first time in 2 weeks. Andy listed some potential future venues, including the old standbys, Indy and Chicago, Detroit, Vegas, and Brooklyn on the list as well. So, Andy, tell us what you know here.
All right, so there are 9 total cities that have put in bids. I was kind of surprised that Omaha, Milwaukee, and LA did not. The 9 are you see on your screen: Indy, Chicago, Detroit, Las Vegas, Brooklyn, Columbus, Seattle, DC, and Minnesota. I think you wipe out the bottom 4, 5, 6, 7 because Indy and Chicago are going to get either 1, 2, 3, or 4, and they're going to award 25, 26, 27, 28. If it's not Indy, Chicago, if it's one of these other cities, I think it ends up in Detroit, which has the Final Four in 27.
Yeah.
Anchor school is Michigan State. They've never hosted it. Maybe Brooklyn at Barclays. They're not going to do the Garden because they don't want to do the week before. Big East has it. and then maybe Vegas, but I've heard the bid's not great from Vegas. Remember, T-Mobile is now available with the Pac-12 gone. So I would hedge, if not Indy, Chicago during that 4-year span, the one other place, potentially Detroit. Your thoughts?
I think that Detroit kind of follows along the lines of Minneapolis, where you have an area that's a historic Big Ten area that hasn't hosted the tournament. I remember doing a radio hit in Minneapolis the year that it was in D.C., and they kind of said, hey, what about us? I mean, we're a charter member of the Big Ten, so it makes sense to go to places like that. I don't know anything about the Vegas bid, but I think if at some point you're going to move it west, that seems like a really logical place to go and somewhere the Big Ten fans would enjoy gathering.
Yes.
I think any group of fans would enjoy gathering for a long weekend, so perhaps down the line. Wrapping things up on Big Ten today, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, a 9 seed, according to Mike DeCourcy as of Tuesday, look to get into the NCAA tournament for the first time in 10 years, just the second time in the last quarter of a century. They have 4 quad 1 wins, have a chance to make it 5 tonight as they will visit Ohio State, an Ohio State team that is playing well. I mean, you talk about timing.
On Sundays.
Only on Sunday. They're Sunday's team?
Yeah. Remember, they win on Sundays, right? Ohio
Okay.
State.
All right. Well,
Purdue,
can they buck the
Michigan
trend
State.
and win on a Thursday?
They lost during the week.
What do you think about this matchup here tonight?
I like the Huskers. It's a midweek game.
Yeah.
No, seriously, I do like Nebraska. I think they're playing better basketball. There's more to play for. I know Ohio State's sort of floating out there as a potential. And maybe I'm rooting for my story here, which is get them out of that 8-9 game.
Yeah.
And they got to keep winning to do that, to get up to a 7. But no, I just think offensively, Nebraska is playing at a higher clip. The way they played against Minnesota on Sunday, yes, it was at home, I think is a good precursor to how they could play here in Columbus.
Interesting game, though, and you mentioned, I mean, Ohio State, like, you look at their wins. They've beaten Purdue, they've beaten Alabama, they beat Michigan State. Like, if they went on a crazy run here, it's not unrealistic to think Ohio State. We've been talking all year about how high their net ranking is. I mean, a lot of the metrics really like them. It's not crazy to think they can make a run.
And I'm glad you raised that.
Yeah.
Because I think some people forget you can't look at the standings.
Yes.
The NCAA selection committee looks at every game individually. So if Ohio State finishes 12th or 13th, that does not matter at all to the selection committee. I mean, you know, they could get in. You're right.
It's a wild stretch.
Yes,
and
but
they
I
have
mean,
right. But it's
who
not,
you beat
it's not totally crazy.
Is better than your record in a league.
Based on
Yes.
based on the teams that they've beaten. What about Rutgers? We were talking about them as being a potential NCAA tournament team a week and a half ago or so. Haven't played well since then. They've lost 3 in a row. Now they get Michigan at home, and that means Doug McDaniel is actually playing. This is the first road game that he will play, and his academic suspension is over. So what are you looking at here tonight?
Well, yes. Look, I sat right here and said if Rutgers goes 5-2 in their final 7, they'll get in. It didn't happen. It's not going to happen. They're not going to get in unless they win the Big Ten tournament. Just offensively, it's just never clicked. You know, Jeremiah Williams obviously was a huge pickup for them, but he sort of tapered off a little bit. And, you know, this is a game, though, I think they got to start building some momentum.
Yes.
You know, let's build some momentum, see what we can do in Minnesota down the last week. Obviously, they've got great momentum overall in the program going forward, so let's finish on a high.
And I spent some time with Steve Peichel over the weekend being there for that game, and I think that was his philosophy. I mean, he wasn't writing off the potential of making the tournament, but was saying you want to finish with good vibes heading into a year that could be a historic year for Rutgers next year with an incredible recruiting class. Do you have plans tomorrow?
I will be sitting right here. I'm not leaving.
Pulls out the
Not gonna
sleeping
leave.
bag, spends the